Hello and welcome to Healthy Living. I'm Jacqueline Lapine, Communications Director for the Department of Health and Senior Services. November is Alzheimer's Awareness Month, an important topic, and the numbers tell the story. Today, 5.4 million Americans are living with the disease, including 110,000 Missourians. And every 69 seconds, someone else develops Alzheimer's. I am joined today by Ashley Burden with the Mid-Missouri chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. Welcome, Ashley.
Thank you for having me here.
If people are not familiar with the disease, can you explain a little bit about what Alzheimer's disease is?
Sure. Alzheimer's disease is a progressive degenerative disease. It starts with that signature characteristic that we're all most familiar with, memory loss. And it becomes a more global affecting disease that will affect many different parts of that person's abilities, thinking, reasoning. And because there is no cure for Alzheimer's disease at this time, it does unfortunately end in death.
And what is the difference between Alzheimer's disease and dementia?
Dementia refers to the symptoms that we just talked about: memory loss, disorientation of place and time, issues with space and visual cues. Those are symptoms that I just listed, and all of those fit under this umbrella called dementia. Alzheimer's disease is the most common form of dementia.
There's a common saying everyone has heard about having a senior moment, perhaps. But is Alzheimer's disease a natural part of aging?
Absolutely not. And I think it's important to understand too the difference between normal aging and Alzheimer's disease. As we age, there will be a certain degree of cognitive loss. Many older people will experience a mild amount of cognitive loss, and names become a little less easier to grab, and you occasionally lose your keys, and that's why we talk about senior moments. Those are common. But Alzheimer's disease is a much more progressive, invasive disease that will eventually affect the entire person. And so it is caused by a disease. There is no cure. And so one thing the Alzheimer's Association is really aware of is how we need to communicate the difference so that people know when to call a physician and get an accurate diagnosis.
Is there treatment available for these individuals who are afflicted with Alzheimer's?
There are treatments available, but they're limited in scope. And they affect people most, or they're beneficial to people most in the early stages of the disease. The way that most of the treatments that are out there work is to lessen the decline of Alzheimer's temporarily. And so for people who are trying to maintain independence longer, it can be really helpful. It can keep them at home longer, can keep them active in their communities longer, can keep them at work longer for those who are working. But unfortunately, eventually the disease will catch up and the medications will lose some of their effectiveness. For people who start taking them later on in the disease, they can't gain back what they've lost. So that's why we always really encourage people to get a diagnosis as early as possible if you're aware of symptoms, and get started on these medications so you can really enjoy the benefits that they allow.
Can Alzheimer's disease be accurately diagnosed?
Yes, and this is really, I think, a frequent myth about that Alzheimer's disease can only be diagnosed upon autopsy. And that's both true and false. What makes up Alzheimer's disease specifically, that really makes it what it is indeed a series of plaques and tangles in the brain that can only be seen upon autopsy. So it is true in a sense. But those plaques and tangles cause so many symptoms that we can see in a living person that living diagnosis today is very accurate, usually about 90% of the time. And as I mentioned before, Alzheimer's and dementia are sort of one and the same. So we often know they have a dementia, we just don't know what's causing it. Since Alzheimer's disease is the most frequent, it's common for that to be the diagnosis that is established, because that's the most likely combination of symptoms that we're seeing.
And what can someone do if they are concerned about memory loss?
Well, I would encourage them to do two things right away. The first would be to contact your physician. I think if memory loss is common in all of us because of stress or lack of sleep or too many responsibilities or whatever. I mean, we all have some degree of memory loss. But memory loss that disrupts daily life is different. And if you have that, you need to see a doctor for that accurate diagnosis. In the meantime, contact the Alzheimer's Association. There's a lot that we can do with families, particularly those in the early stages, who need assistance with legal planning, financial planning, reviewing the medications that are available and getting suggestions on what to engage in. It's a great way for the person with the disease to really direct his or her own care. So involving the Alzheimer's Association right away is great. We can provide a wealth of information and resources for coping skills, planning, as I said, and really relying on those community of people that have been through it before.
And I would imagine you guys are a great resource, not only for the individuals, but also families. Tell me a little bit about the impact on families and what families can do with their loved ones and what they maybe need to look out for.
Our focus at the beginning is on the family, but also the person with Alzheimer's disease. As that person loses the ability to engage, we find that families really suffer and need a lot of help. And we can help them through support groups and coping tips, communication tips, and ways to really positively engage the person with Alzheimer's disease. There's a lot of great ways to deal with some of the issues that arise with Alzheimer's disease, with communication, with understanding and comprehension, with having a meaningful experience with a person who's maybe no longer communicative. And those are ways that we can really help through trainings, workshops, support groups, books, all of it.
And you have a few tips for folks out there on how they can maybe prevent the onset of Alzheimer's. What are a couple of those things?
One thing that we really know about Alzheimer's disease when we look at large populations is that the highest rate of Alzheimer's disease is coinciding with people who have diabetes, heart disease, and stroke. So based on what we know, based on the fact that diabetes, heart disease, and stroke may be precursors for Alzheimer's disease, we highly encourage people to do what they can to avoid those diseases, hoping those will result in good brain health. So what we often say is, what's good for your heart is good for your brain.
And it certainly will improve their quality of life regardless.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and sharing this great information. For more information on Alzheimer's disease and for all of the health information you need, visit our website, health.mo.gov.